There's a voice inside your head, you hear it every day, it sounds like you, but it isn't always on your side. It narrates your life, commenting, criticizing, replaying, reminding. It tells stories about who you are, what you've done, and what you'll never be. It's the voice that whispers, "You're not enough." The voice that replays every mistake, every regret, every doubt you've ever had. And the strangest part? You listen to it, as if it's telling the truth. That inner voice, the one that never stops talking, is not your enemy. It's not evil. It's not broken. It's your mind, doing what it was designed to do, protect you. You see, your brain has one mission, to keep you safe. And to do that, it constantly predicts, compares, and warns. That's where the voice comes from. It's your internal prediction system, a psychological defense mechanism. When it tells you, like, don't try, what it really means is, don't get hurt. When it says, you're not good enough, it's just trying to lower expectations to avoid disappointment. Did you ever notice the little voice inside your head that's constantly running the play-by-play of your life? To you, the one who's actually living it. Did you ever listen in to your inner narrator, the one who's unceasingly packaging your life, verbally preparing your experience for transmission to another unidentified listener? I just went on an 8-day silent retreat, and apparently my inner narrator didn't get the memo that it was to remain silent. For the first 5 days, the little voice in my head didn't stop talking, not even to catch its imaginary breath. With obsessive precision, it explained to me what I was doing, how I had transformed, and what spiritual lessons I had learned. Over and over, my inner narrator repeated my experience to me, prepared it for sharing, and made sure I had everything wrapped up as clearly and understandably as possible. It's an odd thing, really. As we're having an experience, the little voice in our head is simultaneously describing, explaining, and commentating on it, providing a summary before, during, and after its unfolding. Often the narration is so integral to our experience itself, so uninterrupted and merged with it as to make us wonder if there could even be an experience without the accompanying report. If an experience happens without simultaneous inner acknowledgement, thinking, and commentary, does it actually happen? It's also interesting to notice that the little voice is not without its own characteristics. It has a certain language, style, and tone. It does its storytelling and commentary with a thematic and textural consistency. Like a Hollywood screenwriter, the voice tends to write in a particular genre: tragedy, comedy, drama, film noir, etc. Our commentator is a character with an identity of its own. Did you ever wonder why our mind is telling us what we're doing while we're doing it, as if we didn't already know? Or why our mind is so adamant about getting the story of our life figured out, written, and packaged? And finally, why we need to rehearse the tale of our life before we actually need or want to convey it to another person. The mind believes that we are made of mind, and mind alone, and that without its felt presence, we would cease to be. If the narration were to stop, and the mind was not experiencing itself through the act of thinking, there would be nothing. Oblivion. A mind off-duty, experience without the thinking, is tantamount to non-existence. The mind creates the story of an I. It creates an I as an object in our consciousness. In so doing, it maintains both the experience of a self and the experiencer of a self, which it believes are needed to ensure survival. In relentlessly narrating the story of ourselves, to ourselves, the mind is also attempting to make life, and us, into something solid, knowable, and constant. By creating a main character called me, played by mind, who's living something called my life, the mind attempts to transform the ephemeral, groundless, ever-changing nature of being into something that can be understood, managed, and, in theory, controlled. It takes what is really one unified process, life, from which we are inseparable, and splits it into two different things, a me and a life. We then become the liver of this thing called life, and in the process, seemingly distinct and real, we literally think ourselves into existence. Article continues after advertisement, and so the questions beg. First, is there a downside to living with this inner narrator? And second, do we have to live this way? Is it part and parcel of the human condition? Is there no alternative to a second-hand version of life, knowing experience only through the mind's description and commentary? The answer is a resounding yes and no. Yes, there is a downside, and no, we are not condemned to live this way. The small downside to living with the play-by-play of your life ceaselessly running in your ear is that it can be intensely agitating and distracting. There exists constant noise in the background and foreground of your life, like having a mosquito buzzing in your ear, one that you can't silence or ignore. But on a more profound level, the downside to the inner narrator is that it stands in the way of your actually getting to experience life firsthand, in all its richness. You're relegated to living through your narrator's description, which is really just a mental representation of the real thing, like a postcard of the Grand Canyon, or a description of chocolate. The little voice goes on then to offer commentary on the narration, a representation of a representation, and you are now 2 layers away from the direct experience of living. You might also notice that the voice in your head presents its version of your life as a truth. It reports your life story as if it were the actual reality existing in the objective world. It's liberating, however, to realize that the narrator's account of what's happening is all going on inside your own mind, and only in your mind. It's not real in any objective sense, but another story about a story which begins and ends inside your consciousness. The good news is that you don't have to live this way. If you've ever been deeply involved in an activity, you might have experienced what's referred to as flow state. In flow, we're so engaged in what we're doing that we cease to be aware of ourselves. We're no longer the one doing the activity. We're literally absorbed into the experience itself. We become the experience. We become life, rather than the one who's living it, and all notion of time and a separate I disappears. And while the mind has convinced us otherwise, what we discover is that when the mind is not there self-referencing and reminding us of ourself, we still exist. We do not disappear, which suggests that we are indeed more than mind. Awareness remains, even when we lose the felt sense of ourself as the one doing our life. Interestingly, such experiences, the ones in which awareness of ourself disappears, when there is experience but no I doing it, are the ones that we later describe as wholly satisfying, blissful, and even divine. The voice is not cruel by nature, it's cautious, but, somewhere along the way, it forgot that you've grown. Psychologists call it the inner critic. It's a product of early conditioning, the echoes of voices you once depended on, parents, teachers, society. When they criticized you, corrected you, or told you to be better, your brain recorded it, not as memory, but as identity. Now those voices live inside you, disguised as your own thoughts, and over time, you stopped questioning them. You began to confuse the voice in your head with the truth about yourself. But here's the truth. You are not the voice, you are the one hearing it. That separation, that single realization, is the beginning of control. Because the voice loses power the moment you observe it instead of obeying it. That's called meta-awareness, the ability to notice your own thoughts without becoming them. It's the foundation of mindfulness, the essence of psychological freedom. Your thoughts are not commands, they're suggestions, and honestly, most of them aren't even new. Neuroscience shows that around 80% of our daily thoughts are repetitive, patterns replayed from yesterday. You don't think, you rethink. The voice inside your head isn't exactly creative. It's more like, recursive. It loops old fears, old beliefs, and old pain, simply because that's what feels familiar. It's interesting how the mind loves the familiar more than the true. That's why change feels dangerous. Not really because it is, but just because it's unknown. But here's the thing. If you want to control that voice, you must first learn to listen to it, not as truth, but as data. So, ask yourself, what is this thought trying to protect me from, and what emotion is it avoiding? Behind every harsh word from your inner voice is a wound that's still healing. You silence the noise not by fighting it, but by understanding it. Because, understanding turns judgment into compassion. And compassion, it turns noise into clarity. One of the most powerful ways to take control of your inner dialogue is through labeling. When a thought appears, don't absorb it. Name it. That's fear. That's doubt. That's my inner critic again. It sounds simple, but it rewires the brain. Functional MRI studies show that when you label a negative thought, the amygdala, your brain's fear center, calms down. The act of naming gives your prefrontal cortex control. You shift from reacting to observing. And in that small shift, you take your power back. But control doesn't mean silence. You can't mute the voice, you can only teach it new lines. That's where reframing comes in, one of psychology's most powerful tools. When the voice says, "I can't do this," you reframe it to, "I'm learning how." When it says, "This always goes wrong," you shift it to, "This time, I know better." The words you use with yourself, they really do build the world you live in. Language is not passive, it's neurological architecture. Every reframe is a neural rewrite. And over time, the voice begins to change its tone. It becomes less of a critic and more of a guide. There will always be a voice inside your head. You can't erase it, but you can decide who speaks louder, the fearful one, or the mindful one, the critic, or the creator, the one that repeats your past, or the one that builds your future. Every moment you're choosing which voice you strengthen, and that choice is the foundation of freedom. So the next time that voice tells you you're not enough, pause, smile gently, and say, "I hear you," then move anyway. Because courage isn't the absence of the voice, it's the decision to keep walking even when it speaks. That's what real control feels like, not silence, but mastery. You are not the noise, you are the awareness behind it, the watcher, the writer, the one who decides what the next thought will be. Mind scripted. Understand your mind, and you'll rewrite your story.